In this video, I'm going to set the record straight about Squarespace. I see so much misinformation out there about the Squarespace platform, what it does, what it can do, what it can't do. And honestly, as a Squarespace designer, it gets my back up. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time going through popular myths and misconceptions about Squarespace. Maybe see where the grain of truth comes from, see how they've improved it, and then give you enough information as possible to pick the right website builder for you. Before we get into this, I just want to say, obviously Squarespace isn't perfect. There are things that I wish it could do, or that it could do easier. What I will say is, we can do most things that you want on Squarespace if you have the know-how. But for the average user, there are some things that are harder to access. And so it's not perfect. But I've staked my entire business on Squarespace. We are a Squarespace web design company because I believe in it. I believe it's the Goldilocks platform. Even for e-commerce now, it is an exceptional platform. I still think Shopify leads the way. I think Shopify is the best e-commerce platform. And so if someone has a large e-commerce store, I will usually say, hey, okay, go to Shopify. Apart from that, if you are a business looking to build a website online, Squarespace is, I would say, 99% of the time going to be your best overall option. It might not be best in class at specific things, although it is in some things. Across the board, it averages out, I believe, as the best. So whilst it's not perfect, I do believe it is the best fit for most businesses online. That said, you're probably doing your research if you've come across this video. You're looking for, a new website and maybe a new hosting provider or new platform to build on. So you got Squarespace. Obviously, it wouldn't be fair if I didn't give everyone else a shout out. So you've got WordPress, Wix, Webflow, Shopify, Framer. Framer's a good platform and kind of new, up and coming, but it is good. Then you've obviously got your more custom things like Drupal, Ruby on Rails, I think, and then a few others. But your main ones are going to be Squarespace, WordPress, Wix, Webflow, and then for e-com, Shopify. But as I said, I think Squarespace is the Goldilocks platform. And in this video, I'm going to bust some myths and tell you why. So myth number one is that all Squarespace websites look the same. And that is just so untrue. I'm going to bring up some examples on the screen now of a few different Squarespace websites that I've built literally in the past couple of months. You'll see, A, that they don't even look like they're built on Squarespace, but B, there is so much variety between the assets, the colors, the fonts, the layout. Everything about these sites is completely different. Squarespace, and again, there is a grain of truth, used to have templates. And by templates, it was, okay, you're restricted within certain sections and certain blocks. You can only add to certain templates. So features were reserved for certain templates, like a restaurant one or, a gym one or whatever it may be. Now, every single Squarespace website is built from the same template, aka you get access to everything all at once. And if you want to start with a complete blank template, you can do that too. I've got a video on blank templates. Head to the channel and you can find it there if you want to start from a blank slate. Now, as long as you or your web design agency that you've chosen know how to use Squarespace, you can get the most design variation that you could possibly imagine. If you go to bycrawford.com/portfolio, you'll see some of the work that we do. We've got some selected case studies on there. Not one of those websites is the same. Even within industries, the websites are completely different. And so this myth originates from when Squarespace was a templated builder. But you contrast that with WordPress and Shopify specifically. You usually have to build from themes. And these themes will have certain features that other themes won't. And so realistically, the truth now is that WordPress and Shopify, okay, yes, you can add your custom code, but you have to start building from themes there. So this isn't really true at all for Squarespace. And yet it's used to slander the platform versus, your Shopify's and your WordPress, even though they do have lots of themes. Not an attack on the other platforms, I do think they are good, but Squarespace is not just templates. Couldn't be further from the truth. Myth number 2 is Squarespace sucks for SEO. And again, there's a grain of truth, but from yesteryear. So Squarespace, when they used to have things called index pages. And basically, in these index pages, you would have sections. But each of these sections was like a mini page. And so each of these pages had a URL, like a slug. And that's just awful for SEO. If you have, all these different slugs within one page, well, that's a recipe for disaster. And it didn't have as robust an SEO feature set as it does now. So now, when you build sections within a page, they just have section IDs. They're not URL slugs. It doesn't confuse crawlers. Squarespace is now excellent for SEO. You've also got SEO Space. So SEO Space is a Squarespace specific SEO plugin. You put it onto your site, you install it. It's on the official Squarespace extension marketplace. You put it into your site, it will scan all of the pages, give you recommendations, and I think they also have like an AI generation tool to give you page descriptions, meta descriptions, all that good stuff. Now, obviously, you don't want to just roll right ahead with the AI stuff. You need to at least tinker with it a bit to give it a human touch because, you don't want it to get flagged for AI spam. But it's an amazing starting point, and it gives access to the layperson or even veteran designers to quickly spin up SEO best practice without having to hire an expert if they don't want. So, the myth stems from, again, a grain of truth, but people are using really outdated arguments here. It's just not the case anymore. And Squarespace is pushing and pushing for more SEO features on Squarespace. And that is evidenced by the fact that they have added SEO Space into the product itself. So it's on the extension marketplace, and you can also see it within the Squarespace product. So they're pushing people onto SEO Space because they know how valuable SEO is in today's market. And side note, Henry, who's the founder of SEO Space, I designed the site, obviously, but he is also, him and his team, you can actually hire them as SEO experts to come in and do either a one-off strategy and optimization of the site, or you can hire them monthly, which I do personally. I put my money where my mouth is. I pay his team, a fairly hefty fee, but the ROI that you get from that SEO is unbelievable. So side note, but if you are thinking about going down more of a DFY, a done-for-you route, you can hire them as well. Myth number 3, I was going for 4 there. Myth number 3 is that Squarespace sucks for e-commerce, or not just SEO, but commerce. Now, again, grain of truth, maybe a few years ago, Squarespace didn't have robust enough systems to really set up like a large e-commerce store. Now, I did say at the start of the video that I still do direct people to Shopify, and I'll stand by that. Shopify has far, far more features, but Squarespace has had such a push, specifically in 2024, so a year just gone, on e-commerce. They've been pushing this like crazy. I even done a stage talk at Squarespace HQ in New York all about e-commerce and all about how actually when we break it down, every site is e-commerce. We're all trying to sell something. Unless you're like a Wikipedia or whatever it is, most sites are still trying to sell something. And so, even when we say e-commerce, we only think of products or maybe a service. That's not always the case. And so technically Squarespace is great for e-commerce because most sites work brilliantly on Squarespace. But traditional e-com, so, you're selling physical products, digital products, services, whatever it may be, Squarespace is now a contender. So it's not the best. I'm not biased. Well, obviously I am biased, but I'm not biased to a degree where I would say to you, hey, you have this huge e-commerce store that's going to be dealing with, multi 7 figures running through Squarespace. I have a few clients who do that. I have one client who does about 3 million a year pounds, so maybe like $4 million a year through their Squarespace store. And then I have another client who just hit 7 figures this past year. So it's not like Squarespace can't handle the volume, but sometimes you need more bespoke, let's say, shipping options. Now, again, Squarespace has most of this, but if your concern is the best of the best, I think Shopify still edges it. However, the myth that Squarespace sucks is so far from the truth. They've been on a tear to make Squarespace one of the top e-commerce providers of the modern day, and I believe they've done that. And they're also introducing Squarespace Payments as well. So Squarespace Payments is out there. It's launched. It's still going through like iterations, but I believe that it can offer much more beneficial what do they call it, like payment percentages. So if you usually pay a processing fee, if you usually pay, I don't know, let's say 2.9%, over time, if you go with Squarespace Payments, you can get that down to maybe sub 2.7. Someone fact check me. I'm pulling figures out of thin air here, but I know that it does work out cheaper. So if you are going to do a huge volume of transactions, then Squarespace might actually be a more cost-effective way. And as they have most features for e-commerce, this could be, again, the Goldilocks platform for you. Now, number 4, so I can actually do 4 this time, Squarespace can't be customized with code. It's just such BS. Like Squarespace, even way back when they had developer mode, where you could code anything you wanted from scratch. You could add CSS, HTML, JavaScript, whatever you want in like pretty much every version of Squarespace that I know of. And again, it's the same in the newest version. Like you can add CSS, HTML, JavaScript. You can do code blocks. You can embed anything. You can code virtually anything in Squarespace that you want. Again, if you go to buycrawford.com/portfolio, you'll see our work. All of that's custom. But the beauty of Squarespace is, let's say you are a client. So let's say, you're a business owner, you're not a designer watching this, and you're thinking, I need something custom, but I'm worried that when like a developer, so let's say you hire me, I'm scared that when Sam codes all of this, I won't be able to use it because it defeats the object of Squarespace. It then becomes unusable for a layperson or for a business owner. That's not true either. So the beauty of Squarespace is that once I've added the code, so let's say I've styled the site with CSS, let's say I've added some plugins, some sliders, whatever it is, with Squarespace, you can still use the drag and drop editor. You can still just pop blocks in place, resize them, change the text, change the color, add blogs, add portfolio items, add e-commerce product. You can do everything without needing to touch any of that code. The CSS lives in the CSS panel. The code injection lives in the code injection panel. Code blocks live in code blocks. You don't have to edit any of this. So once you've either copied and pasted the code, or you've had a developer like me build the site, you just need to concentrate on doing the basics. So most clients that I have, they want full autonomy over the site. And so what we do is we'll code everything to the spec, build it, they're happy. Then we'll do full handover training. So you'll get it's like a 20 to 30 minute Loom. So a Loom's like a video recording software where I'll record me going to the site saying, hey, this is how you add a blog, this is how you add text, this is how you change colors, whatever. You'll have that as training. And so you can update the site. You have full autonomy over the site, and yet you don't have to touch any of the code. You know where it is? We don't need to edit it. And that's why Squarespace is such a winner for even, honestly, huge organizations. So I've worked with some big companies with maybe 10 to 15 people a month touching the site at various points. They love Squarespace, and they usually go with Squarespace Enterprise, which is their program for huge companies, or mostly huge companies. And I am a Squarespace Enterprise approved partner, and so I would help build all of these large scale sites. The reason why these teams love it is because there's so many people touching the site. A lot of them aren't going to be web designers or web developers either. They just need to know, okay, I need to move a block or resize a block and I don't want to break the site. And Squarespace does that. However, you can add all the code, which goes against the myth, so it will still look great. And it will still look extremely custom because it is. So I actually don't know where the grain of truth comes in there, honestly. Because you'll have your page, your section, your blocks, so you can style everything, but then you can add your styling code, you can add your functional code. I don't know where the myth comes from, but it is a myth. Myth number, I think we're on 5 now, is that Squarespace doesn't integrate with anything. I don't know where this one comes from either, to be honest. So people will say, oh, you can't set up Zaps with Squarespace, or you can't set up HubSpot or Hotjar or all of these things. You can't do with Squarespace. My thinking behind this is that it's other, let's call them legacy developers, who think everything needs to be custom. Everything needs to be coded from the ground up. Has its place, obviously, but they often overcomplicate things to such a degree that they've made themselves believe that Squarespace is just like this drag and drop thing, that it's like a walled garden that no one can access, no one can integrate with. It's not true. It's just not true. So in terms of integrations, it integrates with anything. So let's say Calendly, let's say cal.com, they can just be an embed in a code block. You grab the embed code, pop it in a code block, it populates immediately on a site. Let's say HubSpot, you grab the code, you put it in the header injection. Google Analytics, you put in your key, it's there. You paste in the code, it's there. Everything is integratable. Don't know if that's a word, but everything integrates with Squarespace. Hotjar, again, paste the code. People overcomplicate it. A lot of the time, it's just copy code, paste code, save, it's integrated. Zapier, whatever you want to call it. You can set up Zaps, no problem. You can generate developer keys in Squarespace. You can do all of this. So I don't know where that myth comes from, but if anyone tells you that Squarespace doesn't have integrations, they're lying. I would say they're lying to your face. Maybe they just don't know any better. But the fact remains, it's a myth. Now, number 6, I'm running out of fingers, is that you can't scale a Squarespace website. Total myth. So you can have hundreds, if not thousands, if not unlimited amounts of pages on Squarespace. I don't know the exact figure. I know I've had a client who's got up to about 900 pages. That's as far as I know, and they haven't come back to me and say, hey, Sam, we ran out of space. So let's say you have a large company, organization. Or, no, let's say you have a startup and you want to become a large organization. And you're thinking, well, we don't need a blog yet. We don't need a portfolio of our works yet. We don't need services pages or a team page. We just want to get a landing page up. Okay, great. You can do that. You can get the landing page up. You can spin it up in a day if you wanted. If you wanted something more professional, maybe it will take a week. But then you can continue to add things in. So maybe you grow the team. You're not growing about page, you build an about page. Then you want to add a portfolio. Maybe you are a VC. So, okay, well, you start adding a portfolio in of companies that you've invested in. Then you want to add a blog in. Then you want to add an awards section in. Then you want to add an event section. You can keep stacking these and filling these collections. So Squarespace has collection pages. You've got blogs, events, video collections. You've got members areas. You've got all these different collections where you can then nest other pages in. So you won't have a big menu of 1,000 pages. Pages will begin to be nested, and you can search for pages, you can filter for them, you can use drop downs to organize your pages. You can scale a Squarespace website as large as you want. It can handle as much traffic as you want to send through it. To give you an idea, I have had a client, it was a very famous restaurant in America, Chicago specifically, and they were running about 1 million visits through their site a month. 1 million visits a month for a restaurant. Crazy, I know. But they were doing that no problem. So I don't know where that comes from. Again, not sure of the origin of that myth. Maybe it's because of the old versions of Squarespace where you did feel like you were confined to a template. And if you wanted to expand and change your color palettes and fonts, you could still do it, but maybe it felt a bit more restrictive. It's not the case now. You can swap out your branding, no problem. You can add custom fonts in with a little bit of code. You can build anything you want on top of what you already have, as well as being able to go back and edit things maybe that you want to tweak. And so, complete myth that you can't scale the Squarespace website. Finally, we've got you don't own your website. Well, that's not true either. If we look at WordPress and WP Engine, so Google that, it's a big fiasco where basically WordPress has switched off all these WP Engine websites. I don't know how it's progressing at the moment. Maybe the websites are back up. But what WordPress developers love to, hopefully I'm not going to get loads of hate for this. Sorry, WordPress developers. But what, maybe not all WordPress developers, but what a lot of them say is, well, you own your website on WordPress. You own your website if you build blah, 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 blah. Fact of the matter is, not really. If someone wants to switch off your website, they're going to switch off your website. Yes, Squarespace is a private company, but you still own the website. You still own the domain, the content. You own all of it. But my point is that WordPress are still able to shut down all of these sites that use, a builder, whether it be WP Engine, whether it be something else entirely. So you don't own the website in the way that they proclaim from the rooftops. If the company goes bust or wants to shut the site down, well, they're going to do it. And so, yes, you do own your website with Squarespace, but people who say that you don't, it's the exact same on their platforms as well. It's the same with any website. It has to be hosted somewhere, and if that host, if their servers go down or whatever it may be, then the site goes down. That said, Squarespace has a 99.9% uptime rate. It's fantastic. I don't ever know of a time my site ever being down, and my site's been up for about 5 years now, maybe 6. I have heard of other people's go down for a few hours, but mine personally never has. And so I can fully vouch for Squarespace's uptime, speed, and overall, honestly, just fantastic experience. So, what is the actual truth? What's the truth about Squarespace? Well, it's cost efficient, it's fast, it's reliable, it's infinitely customizable, it's great for SEO, and it's honestly, I think, the perfect platform for the vast majority of businesses. If you don't need e-commerce at the highest level, I think Squarespace honestly covers pretty much everyone's needs. Now, I can't say 100% because someone will call me out in the comments, but it will cover 99% of people's needs. And honestly, it's the best of all worlds. And that is why I built my entire business on and around Squarespace. I love the brand. I love the people behind the brand. I love the company as a whole. And I believe if you're looking for a website builder for your next website, you should definitely consider Squarespace. I've busted the myths, now you know the truth, and it's up to you what you want to do. If you do want someone, a professional, to build your Squarespace website, then I have a company, by Crawford. You can see our work. I've mentioned it throughout the video at bycrawford.com. And if you want me and my team to build your Squarespace website, you can get in touch using the links in the description.